Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series for international economics. And in this particular video, I'm going to be taking a look at the world relative supply. And this is important because students oftentimes have difficulty understanding why the relative supply has this type of shape. Why it has a step function aspect to it, why it looks this way. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time and hopefully give people a better understanding about why it has this particular shape. If you remember, we were talking about two different countries, and I'm returning to the example that is in your textbook. The text I'm using is the 10th edition of International Economics by Krugman, Obstfeld, and Malits. So if we move to a new edition of the book, it might not be the same, but this relates to figure 3.3. So we have two countries that could potentially produce cheese and wine. And we want to understand why the supply curve should take this particular shape. If you think about this, if we start at a very extreme amount, let's assume that the price of cheese is equal to 0. If the price of cheese is equal to 0, remember that workers are going to pick the item to produce that gives them the highest level of income. So if cheese is selling for 0 and wine has a positive price associated to it, then nobody is going to want to produce cheese because they're going to derive no income from that. Now, if we have the price migrate up slowly here, so if we move slowly up this relative price of cheese to wine, as the price of wine increases as the price of cheese increases relative to the price of wine, we move up this vertical section until we get to the point where the price of cheese equals the opportunity cost of production of cheese in the home country. Once we reach that point, then it is going to be possible for the home country to start producing some cheese. As a matter of fact, it is possible for them to still produce no cheese and all wine, or it could go to the other extreme end of that and produce nothing but wine and no cheese. So at that price, it's possible for the level of cheese relative to wine to fall anywhere in this range here until we reach this particular point. And it's important to understand why this particular step ends here and goes up vertically. Realize that what this represents is that the numerator here is a measurement of the home country specializing in cheese production. So the numerator is the output of cheese by the home country when they fully specialize in cheese production. And the denominator represents that the foreign country is still specializing in wine production. So this is just the level of cheese produced in specialization by the home country divided by the level of wine produced when the foreign country specializes in wine production. So this reaches the maximum point. This is the point where we have specialization and trade occurring, where the home country is specializing in cheese production and the foreign country is specializing in wine production. So we've reached the point here where the price level is exactly equal to the opportunity cost of production. If we continue to migrate upward here with the price of cheese increasing relative to wine, we will see no change in the relative amount of cheese produced relative to wine, because what's occurring is we're staying at that point where cheese is being produced in the home country and wine is being produced in the foreign country. The price will migrate. If it keeps migrating upwards, it will reach a point where it equals the opportunity cost of production in the foreign country. And at that particular amount, at that particular ratio of prices between cheese and wine, then we see a triggering occurring where it is now possible for the foreign country to start producing cheese. And again, that level of production can fall anywhere between no cheese and all wine versus all wine, an area of all wine and no cheese, and an output level that is all cheese and no wine. So make sure that you understand why it has this stepped function here. That for sufficiently low prices, neither country will produce cheese. So we will be on this portion of the supply curve for all those prices that are below the opportunity cost of production for the home country. Once we reach a relative price of cheese to wine that's equivalent to that, then we have a horizontal section. And this will, where we actually appear on this, or where we intersect on this particular supply curve, is going to be based on taste and preferences, i.e. what the relative demand of price and cheese is. This point here is important because this represents when the home country fully specializes in cheese production and the foreign country specializes fully in wine production. So once we reach that price, that is the maximum amount of cheese that can be produced for wine at that particular price. As the price of cheese continues to migrate upwards, we are still going to be at this level here where the home country is specializing in cheese production and the foreign country is specializing in wine production. As prices migrate upward, it does nothing to change this situation until the price of cheese relative to wine becomes equal to the opportunity cost of production in the home country, and then you will see that the home country can shift to some production of cheese relative to wine.